Here is an overview of the first three sections of Chapter 3 about ratios. In 3.1, we learned how to read and write ratios. In 3.2, we learned about tape diagrams and how to find equivalent ratios. And in 3.3, we talked about ratio tables, like this one with flowers to petals. 1 flower is to 5 petals, as 2 flowers are to 10 petals. Here's an example of 3.1, how to read and write ratios and find equivalent ratios. What is the ratio of red squares to yellow circles? We can see there's 3 red to 4 yellow, so the ratio is 3 to 4. We could also write it like this. For every 6 red squares, we need 8 yellow circles. We just doubled both of those numbers. 3 times 2 is 6, and 4 times 2 is 8. Or we could come up with another equivalent ratio. If we take the original number and multiply both by 10, we get 30 to 40. These are equivalent ratios. This shows a part-to-part ratio because we're asking about squares to circles. Here's an example of a part-to-whole ratio, red squares to total shapes. So you can see we have 3 red squares and 7 total shapes. So again, here are some equivalent ratios. We have 3 to 7. We could say 6 red for every 14 total shapes. We just doubled each number. Or remember, a ratio can look like a fraction. 3 times 5 is 15, and 7 times 5 is 35. Here's a word problem that uses ratios. So this one says, Azul went snorkeling and he noticed the ratio of parrotfish to clownfish was 4 to 3, and he saw 20 parrotfish. So here's parrotfish to clownfish, 4 to 3. He saw 20 parrotfish, so I put the 20 below the P. We want to know how many clownfish he saw. Well, you might notice that 4 times 5 is 20, and 3 times 5 is 15. You could also write it this way. Parrot to clown is 4 to 3, and we know we have 20 parrotfish. That goes on top, and 4 times 5 is 20, and 3 times 5 is 15, so 15 clownfish. Here are some examples with tape diagrams. This one is from the book. There are 3 bones in a cat for every 4 bones in a dog. The cat has 240 bones. How many bones does the dog have? Well, if this is 3 different segments that are equal, we take 240 and divide it into 3 parts, and each segment is 80. So 80 times 3 is 240. And for the dog, it would be 80 times 4, which is 320 bones. Here's another tape diagram example. Sometimes it will say there are 14 total red and blue chips. How many red do we have? Well, if there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 segments, and there's 14 total, we know each segment is 2. So the red would be 2 and 2, because 14 divided by 7 is 2. And so there are 4 red, and then I think you can see there'd be 2 times 5 blue, which is 10. 4 plus 10 is 14. And finally, we looked at ratio tables. Here's an example with frogs to toads. Originally, there were 4 frogs for every 6 toads. And then all of a sudden, we had 20 frogs, which is 5 times as many. So we need 5 times as many toads, which would be 6 times 5, or 30. And then all of a sudden the toads tripled, so we multiplied 30 times 3 to get to 90, and 20 times 3 to get to 60. And then finally we were at 90 toads and they doubled, so we multiplied times 2, so 90 times 2 is 180, and 60 times 2 is 120. We could have also looked at 6 and figured out how did we get to 180. Well, here we multiplied by 30. So in this case, we could do the same thing up here. 4 times 30 is 120. That's all for now.